Glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I can see a lot of people in the room. I can even see my former boss in the room. Big shout out to Maroga, Mr. Wally. Nice to be here. Okay, so I was tasked to talk about the barriers and the potentials of digital education. I don't have a presentation because it's just for me to speak from the heart and speak from what I know, and that's what I was tasked with to talk about the barriers and the potentials of digital education. It's been an interesting journey so far, working with amazing people here at AltSchool Africa. Um, it's the goal has always been about impact. Our goal is to transform the African continent by empowering about 10 million Africans through skills, like practical skills that are needed on the not just on the continent but across the globe, right? Our goal is to do that on or before 2030, and the reason for that is the reason why I'm saying this is because of what the I was starting to talk about, like the potential of digital education. One of the things that led the founders to that mission is because of these barriers that we're talking about, these issues when it comes to learning digitally, right? One of the things we've also seen is with the increase in the number of universities, institutions of learning, and all of that across different countries in Africa, not just in Nigeria, right? We discovered that we're not totally solving our the problem posed in education, right? There are a couple of them. I'll just highlight some of them. I believe by the time we start the proper conversation, I will get to, with other speakers, we'll get to address a lot of them. But one of the key things that we've seen is that the increase in more education institutions, right? Institutions of learning, increase in institutions of learning hasn't necessarily solved the problem. And that's because as a continent, we have certain things that are really a problem, barriers for us. One of the core problems we have as of today, right, is what we generally just call access, right? One of the challenges we have today is access, right? There are several roadblocks for learning, several block barriers that have been placed. One of them is basically standard, right? And I'm not saying standard is a problem. Standard is good to have standards, right, that have been put in place. But learning should be universal. That's one of the things I personally also believe. Learning should be universal. Learning should not be such that you have a roadblock to gaining a skill or a knowledge, right? Now, at the same time, it doesn't then mean that certification should just be open up to everybody, that we should just certify anybody. If we're doing that, then we'll be certifying people that should not be doctors, we'll be certifying people that should not be engineers, and then we'll end up having unqualified personnel in hospitals or medical facilities, or even people building our bridges and all of that. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that from a skills standpoint, learning such that you can attain skills should be universal. And one of the things we realized is that in the process of standardizing things, we have made it difficult for a lot of people to acquire skills that are relevant in today's world, right? And that's why a lot of our government institutions and are trying to catch up with making it possible for those so-called structures that were put in place in traditional settings, in that sense, in traditional institutions of learning, to find ways to make things better, right? As of today, a lot of people go into debt trying to learn, and that's because the cost of learning is high, right? That's the second part about access I'm talking about. The first part of access is the part of standards that speaks to legislation, right? The second part is cost, right? That renders access, right? And the thing is, in today's world, we need skills, right? To a large extent. Skills do us better than certifications, right? But there are certain rules and certain jobs that require certifications because of the nitty-gritty of what is at stake. But not all jobs, not all roles require such level of certifications. And to a large extent, Africa has, or some of our cities are going to, in the next 5 years, see increase in population, right? And which would definitely affect unemployment rates if we're not careful, right, in providing as much opportunities as we can on the continent, or out providing, making sure our people are up to par such that they are competitive at the global stage, right? So so that's the second one. Cost, in the sense that things have gotten really expensive in the way of, okay, I want to learn this skill, I want to know this, I want to know that. A lot of people say, oh, just go to YouTube and learn and all of that. But one of the things we discovered is that even with some of the free resources online, to a large extent, our people are still struggling. And that's because the way we learn in Africa is unique, is different from, to a large extent, how some other parts of the world learn. We are very similar to a lot of African countries are similar to Indians, right, in terms of how they learn as well. But where I'm going to is, in terms of all of that, is our mode of learning is also very unique, and that's why it's been difficult for a lot of MOCs to be able to provide services in terms of learning online to people. The third part I'll talk about when it comes to access is a lot of our institutions are physical locations, making it difficult for, when we talk about access, for a lot of people to get to them, right? So we say, oh, I need to learn something, I have to travel. But we're in a digital world, and in digital education, one thing we've discovered is, to a large extent, our platforms are still trying to be hybrid, where we provide physical location when we still say we're learning online, right? So, so we have those three core things. I'll just stop there and wrap it up. Legislation is one thing, right? That is all a major problem. Cost is one thing when it comes to access as well, right? And the fact that this last part is what I'll just dwell on as I hand over, is that when it comes to digital education, especially in this field, right, we have to be very careful to understand that we are not talking about how would I describe it? I'm trying to describe it in a way that we're not talking about anything can be learned, right? But the manner and the what is required, right, to be able to do it. There are several things you require to be able to learn that skill or gain that experience, right? Anything can be learned. But when it comes to digital education, we're talking about education that is available to you without you having to leave that space you're in. That's the closest way I can describe it, right? In terms of access, right? You are where you are, but you are able to access all of the resources, all of the things that you need without having to leave that locality. And that's the power of the internet, right? And what we're preaching these days is that we're telling as many institutions as possible to restructure their mode of learning such that they are addressing this problem we have about access, right? First thing, the government side. Second thing is the cost aspect, right? Third part is the area of even the presentation of how these things are presented, right? So we have a lot of videos being recorded now in classrooms, and those videos are just being consumed, and then people still don't get it, right? Digital education has shown us, and the way we learn has shown us to a large extent, that it's not just about recording the sessions and people listening to the sessions. It's about, you have to provide the enabling environment for people to actually learn, which means everything has to be online, right? And that's one of the things that we've seen that and discovered, and because AltSchool Africa is a fully online program, so it's fully online. So basically, we've seen the challenges and the difficulties of how it is to actually get people to not only learn online, but to have a communal environment such that the same something similar to what you will get when you go to a college of education or any physical institution of learning, right? And doing all of those things fully online, right, is one of the things that is always going to be a challenge. But one of the things we're telling institutions and telling everybody that because we're about the mission, it's not about us. Oh, we have to be the first. No, it's about we working with every other provider of digital education out there to make sure that we are all providing the enabling environment for which you can learn online, you can learn from anywhere you are, and it's accessible, right? In that sense, there are a couple of other barriers, right? I know I've spoken for more than 5 minutes. I don't know if it's up to 8 minutes. There are a couple of other barriers. I believe we'll be able to talk more about it. But one thing, key takeaway I just want to mention is all of the things I've mentioned shouldn't deter us from being able to bridge that gap, right? That is why all of the conversations that I believe we will definitely have today would speak a lot about all of these things, and we'll be able to make headway together. Yeah, so it's not just about Nigeria. If there's anybody from any other part of the continent of Africa, I'm bullish about Africa because our mission is Africa, but we are always open to every other continent. But yes, we need to move together as a continent to be able to learn together, improve together, gain the right skills, and to be competitive on a global stage.
It's been an interesting conversation. You've hit on some really important parts. We spoke a lot about access for African youth. So what strategies you think we can employ to ensure that digital education get to remote and undeserved communities in Africa? How do we drive access?
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you once again. So one of the things I like about we Africans is that we are not, this is not to mean that other continents don't have this. Just a disclaimer out there. We have a way of addressing our problems because we've seen ourselves go through a lot of phases where, especially when it comes to government, like governing bodies and all sorts, right? We have a way where we don't wait for other people to solve our problems, right? To a large extent, I'm not saying everybody, but we have that feature where we try to be innovative in our own way. And what I mean by that is you have a problem. Let me use the fact that we use a lot of wells up and down, right, to get water, right? Like you don't wait to say, somebody will bring water for me. You just start digging for water, right? Let me just use that as an example, right? Because we're trying to solve. And the reason why I use that in context is to introduce what I want to say. I'm very optimistic that the problem of access when it comes to rural areas will not be solved by somebody that's not familiar with that territory. I'm very optimistic that if we can enable people within that area to start thinking differently and to give them the right knowledge, they can find ways of solving their own problems. I do not believe in enforcing products or technologies on people. I believe in people embracing products and technology because it solves a pain point, right? So what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to access, there's a part of infrastructure that we cannot, to a large extent, we can only find ways, maybe startups or individuals that would support, or organizations that would support, right? Or NGOs that would support, right? There is one I'm very familiar with when it comes to, you can't have, the internet thrives on power, electricity. If there's no electricity, it becomes difficult to say you want to get access, right? So if there's no power, it's difficult to say connect to the internet, right? Because even if you give people devices and there's no power, right, there is still no way for them to connect. Even if you give them, provide as many Starlinks as you want, and you provide all of that, if there's no power to power the device and all of that. So there's that part of infrastructure. So I'm not ruling that part out when it comes to those areas, right? But I believe so much with what has happened in the energy space that to a large extent, solar energy and some startups that have found ways to make power, make renewable energy accessible to these people,
mm,
have been able to open up some villages and communities to the world, right?
mm.
So that
Okay.
they are not isolated, right?
Mm,
So that's what I believe. I believe that once we start introducing the concept
okay.
of renewable energy, the concept
Mm,
of, so that's the knowledge part. When we start
okay.
introducing that, all of the other things that people are, okay, I don't have to depend on government to a large extent. Oh, there are other things that we can do. There are other areas. Then once we empower people with that knowledge, right,
Mm,
it's easier for people that have come out of that area. Like for instance, let's say somebody that came out of um, a city. Maybe I'm trying to recall. Okay, like for instance, I can see a lot of Nigerian names here. So let me use Nigeria as an example, right? Somebody that comes from a village in
okay.
Ekiti State, right? And is
Mm,
already empowered, right? Knows that their village, they barely have power. When they go, you have to carry power banks, carry all sorts, and they use a lot
mm.
of generators and all sorts, right? That knowledge of, oh, now we need to empower people in our village, or we need to, by the time you see a startup or a company providing renewable energy to people in that locality, you want to support, because what that means
Yeah,
is that that knowledge of, oh, there is another way of, it opens our entire community, right? And the barrier of, oh, without government I cannot gain this, goes down, right? Because there's
I
also the
see that.
mental barrier there, right? So what I'm going to is that there's
Mm,
that part where we need to first deal with the knowledge that, oh, there are other ways of us solving these problems. It's not just about the
without,
infrastructure that the government must provide. There are other ways
I
of
see that.
providing those set of infrastructure, but we need to be able to start creating that awareness first. Because if those things are not properly, like, preached, or let me use the
Mm,
word evangelize, in those areas, right?
right.
People won't then realize that, oh, I can actually just use a solar light in the night,
To
right?
empower my
So,
mom.
oh,
Mm,
yeah. So that's that
mm.
part, right? Knowledge and
Okay.
being able to get that there,
I think
right? That's what I would
I
just
think you've
dwell on
answered.
mostly, right?
I think you've answered that. It begins with the people themselves, don't having to wait forever for a savior who may never come. So, what if you're talking to a young Africans today, who is who wants to leverage on technology to first of all better even their own economic life? I mean, make a living for themselves. What skill do you think will be the most crucial for an African youth to thrive in the digital economy? What are the skills you consider most important?
Is that question for me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Just okay. Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. So, I have a bit of unconventional way of answering this type of question, right? So, let me
Mhm.
put an apology out for anybody that might feel offended by my response, just as a disclaimer of some sort, right? So, I'll use an example. I've had a couple of people reach out to me, especially via LinkedIn, saying that they want to transition into technology. I'll use this as just an example to answer the question, right? And the first question they're asking is, what is that skill, or what is that training I need to go through? Am I meant to learn this particular skill, or should I become a data this? Should I become a software engineer? Should I do this and all of that? The first thing I do most I do is on via LinkedIn. I just go and check their profile, all right, and see what they're already doing, right? And that's the first answer I'll give. What exactly are you doing right now, right?
Mm,
There's that part of whatever you're doing right now. There's a space for you to be able to learn the let me say the digital alternative of that thing,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, right? There's a
Mm.
digital alternative for what you're already learning, right?
What
So
you're
you
doing.
can actually harness that wealth of experience and convert it into some form of digital. So let me give an instance. For somebody who is already um who writes a lot, who does a lot of writing and all of that, right? And they're like, oh, I want to leverage on the digital space. I want to leverage. And I'm like, okay, you write a lot, right? Why don't you just be a freelancer online and write for people? Be a ghostwriter, right? I
Mm.
know a couple of ghostwriters who have written novels for people who have been paid in pounds and euro, like they've paid in foreign currency and all of that. Because that same person will tell me, I want to learn data. They say data is a new thing now. Let me go and learn data. I say, no, like you don't necessarily need to go from your area of strength to your area of weakness. I tell people to focus first on their area of strength rather than move to the area of. I'm not saying people shouldn't explore, but I'm saying in order for you to transition properly, right? What technology is basically doing for you is to empower you, not to change you, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first part. The second part is what are those? Or that's the first part. So I just want to clear that out, right? So to properly answer your question now, it goes back to I try to focus on interest, right? And because a lot of people say passion, what are you passionate about? It's very difficult to find your passion until you start exploring, right? You might not know you can something might pique your interest and and the passion gets stronger over time, right? So what are those things you're interested in? Then we start to find the the areas or the things that are close to it that you can learn as skills, right?
Mm.
So I give an instance. This one is very common. A lot of people in marketing and comms have reached out to me in time past where they're like, I want to, I hear, oh, I want to be able to, you know, work with technology startups or technology companies and all of that. And I say, oh, that's interesting, right? What are you thinking about? Oh, I want to learn product management. And I'm like, why product management? They already say that it's not technical, so I can just become a product manager. And I'm like, but you're already a marketing and PR a comms person, right? So you can just become that for that company. They say, no, I want to have a upper hand. I want to have an upper hand. I want to be able to do this and that. So I tell them, okay, if you really want to focus on products, there's something called product marketing,
Mm.
right? And then focus on that, not product management. So
Mm.
convert your strengths and let your strength work for you better. So that's how I think about it. What is that interest area? What are those areas that we can then help to do that transition? Because it's easier that way and it's shorter. Because if you pick an area that you don't have any power strength in, right,
Mhm.
you will spend a longer time and you might exhaust your savings or your safety net such that
Mm.
you become frustrated and you say tech is not working or this
Yeah.
digital stuff everybody shouts is not working, and then you see testimonials of somebody that tweeted and said, I've been a freelancer for just 18 months and this is how much I've made, and you're like, what is happening? I've been learning this thing for 12 months.
Mm.
I've not been able to make a dime, right? So that's
Yeah.
how I've answered. I don't know if I've answered the question, but that's how I said
Yes,
it's
you did.
unconventional, so apologies.
You did. You did.